Welcome to the Social Bee podcast with your host, Louise Brogan. Every week, Louise will be bringing you a podcast all about women entrepreneurs, talking about their challenges, their goals, and inspiring you to either start your own business or grow the business you have. Visit www.socialbeeni.com to join our community and pick up some lovely freebies to start marketing your business online today.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Social Bee podcast. Today I have a fellow podcaster on for you all, which is always a delight for me to talk to another podcaster and hopefully for you too. So I'd like to welcome Jess Lorimer on the podcast today. Welcome, Jess. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this. It's really nice to be the one being interviewed as opposed to being the interviewer. So it feels like a little holiday for
me.
Good.
A busman's holiday. Sounds good.
Exactly.
So Jess has a podcast and also has the Smart Leaders Sales Society. Jess, is that correct?
I do, yeah. So over on Facebook, we're currently mid-challenge at the moment. So it's absolutely buzzing, which is keeping me caffeinated, which is good. It's always a good start.
Yes. So Jess, if you want to just take a moment to really introduce yourself to everyone listening and tell them a little bit about your business and your products and services.
Yeah, of course. So my name obviously is Jessica Lorimer. I am the founder of what I call the Smart Leaders Sell movement. We don't add in movement in the end because it sounds a bit pretentious. But about 5 years ago, I set up a sales consultancy business and I work with online entrepreneurs, primarily female entrepreneurs, to really enhance their sales processes and help them create more cash in their business and make more of an impact in the world using simple sales processes that actually are enjoyable for you and your customer.
Well, that's so interesting because I am a female entrepreneur and I'm in this space really since about 2013. And I see in the groups that I'm in online, I see that people really struggle with sales. And I think, Jess, just to dive straight in, I think one of the issues is that a lot of people who leave work to start their own business have no training in sales. Sure, they don't.
It's so interesting that you say that because I think a lot of people don't come from a sales background, but a lot of people I work with do have other elements that make them good salespeople. So if you've ever had children, you're automatically an amazing salesperson. Dating children is difficult. If you have a partner or a spouse, again, it's this idea of persuasion and negotiation. I think that's actually what makes people feel quite uncomfortable about sales. When we use those words, persuasion or negotiation, we tend to give them connotations like manipulation. And that's not true. Sales isn't designed to be manipulative, but it does make people feel that way sometimes. And I think that can be quite uncomfortable for people. And so, they don't think about previous areas in their corporate positions or careers that actually may have required them to sell, whether it's internally to corporate stakeholders or externally to board members or to end users. People don't always remember those experiences, but generally everybody that I meet has had some experience of selling or persuading or helping somebody make an informed decision. And that's all that sales actually is.
Oh, I like that. So it's just really rethinking how you look at the whole thing.
Exactly. Totally about reframing.
So Jess, just to go back a little bit, first of all, you used to work in corporate, didn't you? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So I spent a decade in corporate sales. I know, so fancy. And when people kind of hear about some of the stuff that I did, I think it reduces any kind of incentive for working in corporate sales. So whilst I'm incredibly grateful to my background, I know that not everybody is potentially looking for a job in the corporate sales sphere. But I started out working in jewelry sales. So I started out working for one of the world's biggest jewelry firms way back when I was a teenager. That's my first ever job. And I was tiny. I was one of those people who used to peer over the counter, could basically not see over the counter, but would sell you anything. And so within 2 years, I'd progressed to being the youngest UK and US SOS manager for that particular organization. And that meant that I went to underperforming stores and I turned them around. I helped them sell more stuff. And then I left and I went on to the next one. And about 4 years later, when I was at university, I was still working full time because I loved my job and I wanted to pay my way. And I was headhunted by a global recruitment firm. And so they said, we will pay you more money and you can sit in a fancy office and you can carry a briefcase. And I thought, well, that sounds great. And so I went off and I did that for a few years. And, you know, I was working in depth with particular firms. I was setting up new business divisions and new sales divisions for these FTSE 250 companies. And what then started to happen was that companies that I was working with client side, so luxury fashion brands in my case, were saying to my organization that we'd like Jess to come out and help us set up a sales division in Japan.
Oh, wow.
For example. And would you let her come out here and we'll pay you? And, you know, she can come out here and set up our new business divisions and set up new sales divisions and train sales teams. And so that's what I did for the final part of my corporate career. I was traveling the world. I was setting up new business divisions and new profitable areas for luxury brands across the globe, which was phenomenal. Great freebies. And then I got diagnosed with ME in 2014, early in 2014, and was told it's either the job or you're going to be bedridden by 35.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's how I fell into business. I'd never thought about it previously, never wanted to own my own business. I just was in a position of circumstance that made me think, actually, this isn't the best life choice that I could be making right now.
So you loved the job that you had?
Loved it. It was, I mean, it was horrendous. When we look back at it, me and my friends, we often get together over a glass of wine, or glasses of wine, I think is probably more. But, you know, when we look at it, we were doing, you know, 70, 80-hour weeks. We were traveling constantly. We were never not on a plane. We would have what we called the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night club, which was go out drinking with clients every night of the week. It was high profile, high pressure, get in at 7 o'clock in the morning, leave at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was a very, very high pressure environment. And obviously we were operating in a recession. So it was challenging and there was a lot of pressure to make more money, be more profitable. And in the sales world, if anybody comes from there, you'll know that your head has a certain target to it. You know, it's got a certain financial target and you have a very clear time frame. Most companies will say to you, you have 3 months to make the money. And if you don't, then you're out. So it's very high pressure. It's very fast moving. It's very high profile. And I think that, you know, the average company with salespeople has a very high attrition rate. You know, one of the companies that I worked for, we had over an 80% attrition rate for people within the first 12 months.
Wow.
Because, it's high pressure. Very, very high pressure.
Do you think that that a lot of people go into it knowing that and think, well, I'm going to make my money on commission and then get out?
100%. 100%. And I think as well, because actually, and I say this now as somebody on the 30 barrier, right? I'm going to be 30 in September.
You're such a spring chicken.
I know. People were saying this to me and I'm like, I feel so old. Like, I never thought I was going to hit 30. But it's one of those things where when I look back, and I look at the life I had in my early 20s, I thought it was great. Like, what other job could you have where people would pay you to go out and get drunk with your clients? You know, and for me, I was like, this is phenomenal. What a great experience. And how much fun is this? And, you know, in your early 20s, when you're not worried about, I don't know, getting married or, you know, any kind of responsible life work. It was phenomenal. Like, it was fun. It was fast moving. Everything was ever changing. You got so caught up in the adrenaline and the inevitable drama that happens when you go out drinking 6 nights a week. But as a long-term solution, I think what happens is a lot of people, they end up in the sales world, usually because they don't know what else they want to do with their career. You know, we'd see a lot of people who would come in and they'd be super, super talented and they'd have really good industry skills, but perhaps they didn't want to be an engineer or a mathematician. And so they would end up in the sales world and they'd be great at it. But ultimately, it's not necessarily hugely fulfilling to work in that kind of environment for a long period of time. And so we would have this huge attrition rate, and people would burn out very quickly.
But it's funny because I have one of those degrees that doesn't really lead to anywhere in particular. So when you said that, I thought, I wonder if there's a lot of people who did geography who end up
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
I have a degree in the psychology of theatre, also completely useless. And I can tell you, lots and lots of drama graduates, lots of English literature graduates, lots of history, all of those kinds of humanities, I think they banned them under nowadays.
So funny. I have a funny story that I might have told on the podcast before, I can't remember. But when I was in between not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life, and I worked in a call centre and I was doing cold calling sales. It was a World Cup on, so I'm trying to think what World Cup it was. I'm in my 40s, Jess, so we probably were at school at the time. I was every single day, for the 6 weeks I worked there, every single day I was the top seller in my team.
Yeah.
So I definitely had the knack. But I'm glad I went down the IT road and not into sales, because I think if I was out drinking 6 nights a week, it would be very hard to claw back from that, to be honest.
Right? It's so difficult. And I think as well, like, it's often the people who are best at sales are the people who don't think about it as sales. They're just like, I just talk to people.
Yeah.
And that's what I always used to say to people. I'm like, I just have a little chat with people and then they buy things and it's great. But sometimes, and I guess that's the problem with sales, you have a bit that is inherently you. So if you like having conversations with people, if you are, and I always say nosy, right? If you're nosy, if you want to know things about people, if you're genuinely interested in people, you will be good at selling. The other part of sales is learned skills, and that is where I think it starts to go a bit wonky, because so many corporates or so many sales training schools will tell you there is only one way of doing it. And it won't necessarily harness the personal abilities that you already have or your own personal sales style.
Yes.
And that's where it tends to get drilled out of people. So it's really interesting that you were somebody who was a natural seller and decided to avoid it. Because the chances are you'd have actually been amazing. You could have had this huge sales career. Not that you'd have wanted it, because I haven't really sold it to you by now. But you could have done, Louise, and it might have been amazing.
Yeah, I could have travelled the world with it. How funny.
Exactly. Could have got loads of free handbags.
Sounds good. So when you had realised that you had to leave, basically for the sake of your health, so you started your business from scratch, because when I left my job, I built up my business on the side over 2 years. So that's probably why I didn't do sales. I'm very risk averse. I like to know I've got a backup. I call myself, I'm in a group coaching program, and I describe myself as the slow tanker moving. You can't turn me fast. You can't make me change things fast. I have to go at my own speed. And if you imagine a tanker, how slow it would take to change direction, that's me.
There's a lot to be said for that.
So I built up my business for 2 years and then left, because I knew it was stable and security. Plus, at the time when I started my business, I already had 3 kids, so you can't just risk it all for a biscuit, that type of thing. So how did you start, Jess? Because you kind of plunged into it all.
So for me, I got my diagnosis and I went to my boss, and I remember having this kind of awkward conversation, because this was, ultimately back in the day where, equality was maybe less talked about.
Yes.
And so we kind of had this very awkward conversation where I said, can I work part-time? Because I still want to keep my job. And he said, no, because we don't do that. So I had this really awkward conversation with my boss, and we come to this stalemate, and there was nothing that he could do. And at that time, this wasn't an option. So I handed in my notice, and at that point in time, I had a 3-month notice period, which usually you would get as gardening leave. If you weren't going somewhere that was considered competitive,
yes,
you would be given it, as gardening leave. You could go and do what you want. And they didn't have anyone to replace me. So I had to continue working, and they said, you're going to have to work this out for the next 3 months. And which was good for me. You know, I didn't really know what I wanted to do anyway. And at that point in time, I was, you know, getting the tube